Good afternoon, everyone. The first item on this afternoon's subcommittee agenda is election of chairman. Can I ask for nominations for chairman, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Graham, sorry, any further nominations? Therefore, Councillor Graham Bridgman is elected chairman of the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Jo. Good afternoon, everyone. As you just heard, my name is Councillor Graham Bridgman. I am chairing this afternoon's licensing subcommittee meeting. I'm going to explain how we're going to conduct the meeting in a moment. But before I do that, I'm going to ask Jo, who is our clerk, to give some explanations about how we're going to conduct this mixture of live and Zoom meeting. Jo.
Thank you, Chairman. Can all participants hear me? Thank you. I will start with some reminders to members and other attendees about the way we will conduct council meetings in the new hybrid format. This meeting is being held both over Zoom and with officers and councillors present in the council chamber adopting COVID safety measures. I can confirm that those present in the chamber are sitting socially distanced and are thus permitted to remove their face masks while seated. Parties to the proceedings have been encouraged to attend remotely via Zoom. However, they can choose to attend in person or remotely from within the Market Street building, for example, from reception or the Roger Croft room, or for any public device in any location. The meeting is fully accessible both physically and remotely for any member of the public. This meeting is being webcast and recorded. The chairman will be checking at various points during the meeting that you have all been able to hear the proceedings. We would ask that you do this by clicking the raise hand link at the bottom of your screen. We cannot proceed with the meeting until we are sure that participants in the meeting can be heard when permitted to speak and can hear. If at any point you are not able to hear, please could I ask you to let us know if you're unable to. For example, using the chat function or raising your Zoom hand. If we become aware that any parties have not been able to hear, we will have to go back to that point in the meeting when they were able to do so, or it may be necessary to adjourn the meeting. If you're unable to hear the proceedings, it might be useful to join the meeting via telephone rather than the microphone on your device. Please notify us if you have been absent for any part of the meeting while phoning in. Those of you attending via Zoom only are currently muted. Please remember to unmute yourself when you are asked to speak by the chairman and then remute yourself when you finish speaking. The host may remute you if you forget to do so. You will be advised to unmute yourself if you start to speak and have forgotten to do so. We ask that microphones are muted when not speaking to minimise disruption from the background noise and also to prevent any issues arising from feedback. Those of you present in the council chamber can speak using the microphones. The chairman will set out the order in which people will be asked to speak. If at the appropriate point anyone wishes to ask a question, please use the raised hand facility. This will give an indication against your name on the participants list. The chairman will then be notified that you wish to ask a question. The chairman will then invite you to ask your questions in the order he deems most appropriate. Once you are speaking, please lower your Zoom hand. The host may cancel your Zoom hand if you forget to do so. Anyone that has phoned in won't be able to signal to do so once other participants have raised the Zoom hand, have asked their questions. I will ask the chairman to invite anyone who has telephoned in to ask their questions in the order that he wishes to do so. If we need to adjourn the meeting at any point, the chairman will adjourn and all parties will be advised of the revised time and date of the meeting. If it is a short adjournment, you'll be able to rejoin this meeting. Otherwise, a fresh appointment will be sent out. Does anyone have any questions about the way in which the meeting will be conducted?
Apologies. I was just discussing something with our legal officer, which we will come to in a moment. Right, and thank you, Jo, for that explanation. And just to start the ball rolling on the question of can you hear me, Mother, what we're going to do, and it's really only Mr. Zopa and I don't know if it's Ms. or Mrs. Breeze, please tell me when you come to us and we can make sure we address you correctly, can hear us, because it is very important for these hearings that everyone hears everything. So if both Mr. Zopa and Ms. Breeze can raise their Zoom hands for me. So say key at the bottom. Excellent. Thank you. So you can both hear us. Everyone in the room can hear me, so that's fine. Thank you. We'll do that from time to time just to make sure everyone's heard everything. Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to confirm that this application is for a premises license under the Licensing Act 2003, and it is for the Breeze Drinks Company, Hawkridge House, Hawkridge Hill, Frilsham, RG 18 9XA, and the reference number is 21/00611/LQN. I am supported on this afternoon's subcommittee by Councillor Claire Rolls and Councillor Adrian Abbs. Normally in these meetings, we would have a substitute member just in case one of us suddenly decided to fall ill or discovered an interest that meant we couldn't continue. But unfortunately, our designated sub, Councillor Linden, got pinged yesterday and is now awaiting the result. He doesn't think he's got COVID, but he's awaiting the results of a PCR test to prove it one way or the other. In the chamber with us, we have the solicitor advising the subcommittee, that's Beth Varco. And we also, as you've already heard, have Joe Watt, who is clerking the meeting and will keep a record. We also have Stephen Chard, who you can't see, but is controlling the microphones and the cameras and is Zoom host for the meeting. In addition to, and I have it as Ms. Eleanor Breeze, who is the applicant for this application, we have Mr. Joe Sober, who is attending as representative of the applicant, and they're both, as you can see here, via Zoom. We also have Councillor Andrea Arnold, representing Frilsham Parish Council. Welcome, she's in the chamber with us, and they're the objectors to the application, and we look forward to hearing from you in due course. And we also have the council's licensing officer, Emilia Matu, who is again in person in the chamber and will be introducing the application in due course. Now, there is one thing. I will deal with declarations of interest, and then there's one thing to introduce before we get on with the hearing. So members, do you have any interests you need to declare in relation to this matter? I see shakes of the head, and I have none, so we are all declaring no interests. Now, I will explain how the proceedings are conducted, and then I'll come on to the matter I've just been mentioning. Each individual or group of individuals, so that's in turn, if we had a full hearing with everyone here, the licensing authority, the applicant, objectors, supporters, responsible authorities, that's the police, fire service, etc., and finally the ward member, would be able to make a presentation of a maximum of 10 minutes per individual or group, and then we would ask questions. I'll come on to the order of questions in a moment. And after all of that had happened, the applicant gets to sum up. In terms of questions, questions are in this order. First, the subcommittee asks any questions that the members have for whoever has just made the presentation. And then we go through each group in turn at my invitation. And I'll therefore call on each group to ask any questions they have when we come to it. Just to clarify that any question asked must be either relevant to the application or relevant to the council's licensing policy or to clarify a statement that has been made. And if you do have any questions you wish to ask when you've heard a presentation, please either raise your hand physically if you're in the room or raise a Zoom hand, and I'll be able to then take those questions as in turn, as I say. I may not come to you straight away because I will be dealing with them in turn. Since we don't have anyone formally supporting the application or from the responsible authority or the ward member isn't present, the contributions will be first licensing, then the applicant, then the parish council, and finally, as I say, the applicant to sum up. Each 10 minutes that you have must address the Licensing Acts for objectives and the Council's licensing policy. So those are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety. Sorry, I haven't muted that. Let me kill that. Apologies for not muting my phone. Could I ask everyone to check that they have muted theirs, since I've just shown you what not to do? As I say, prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of a public nuisance, and prevention of children from harm. Once we have gone through all of that, so everyone's made their position clear, we've asked all the questions needed, and the applicant summed up, I will then close the meeting as a formality, and the members of the committee will retire to make a decision. That decision will be issued in writing as soon as possible, but in any event, it will be within 5 working days of today. Can I remind everyone that this is a public hearing and that the meeting is being webcast live on YouTube and will be available to watch back. Please take note of that when you are speaking. Now, before we move on to the meat of the meeting, I'm going to ask our legal officer to explain where we are on a particular item of interest.
So I've been made aware that Thames Valley Police and the applicant have been in discussions up until today's hearing, and therefore an application would like to be made for some material to be added to the documents for the panel to consider. The only way in which that material can be added is if every group of speakers, so that's the panel of members, the objector, the applicant, and licensing, if everybody's happy that that material can be added into today's hearing. So I'm not sure who the actual applicant is and haven't been made aware of that. Is it the applicant's application for this material to be added in?
Mr. Zopa, perhaps you can help us on that.
I think that's a question for Elena. Elena, you are muted, I think. Can you unmute?
Yeah, so I am the applicant, Eleanor Breeze, on the director of the Breeze Drinks Company, Ltd. Mrs. It is.
Thank you. And can I clarify? So we have, and the reason we haven't already, and I make it clear that the panel has not looked at this material. The reason we are being asked to look at it is that firstly, it is, as I understand, the result of discussions between Thames Valley Police as a responsible authority and the applicant in relation to potential conditions to be applied to the if we granted a premises license, to a premises license to be granted. And because that material has only just been furnished and is therefore within 5 days of this hearing, we can only look at it if everyone agrees that we should look at it, but someone needs to apply for us to look at it. So again, as Beth has just said, is it you who is applying to us for us to look at this material?
I thought it was the legal counsel who is applying it, but I don't have the objections to add the. Well,
let's, as a matter of formality, let's take it, because it must either, I think it, from my point of view, must either be the applicant or the responsible authority that are suggesting we look at this.
Okay, so it's probably the authority.
Well, they're not here to make an application. They're not in the room. They're not here to suggest that we look at it. So I'm looking for someone to suggest that we look at this document. But
how did the document come about? How did you learn about it? Because I'm not aware.
You're not aware of these?
No, I'm not aware. I have been in correspondence with the Thames Police, but I wasn't aware that they have submitted something for the hearing for today.
Let's pause there. Let me see whether Ms. Mathieu knows anything about this and can assist us.
Thank you, Chairman. I can. The conditions were agreed with the applicant. The conditions were agreed with the applicant and the police. They came to light after the agenda was put together, I retrieved them the last few days and I brought them along to make the people aware here today that there were conditions agreed with police. There was no objection. There was just a conversation between the two of them. They came to this agreement. We had an email to say that the applicant is happy for them to be added to her operating schedule. But like I said, this all came to light after the publication of the agenda.
Which is why, as I say, I would have thought that the applicant would know all about them. If the applicants agreed these.
No, I'm not denying the knowledge of it. So I don't object to adding them to the hearing, to the document, to the file.
Then in order to move things forward, I am going to take that as an application by the applicant to put into discussion some draft conditions for the panel to consider. Now, before we look at them, and I will say that if we decide to look at them, everyone will get to look at them. We will adjourn to read them. Everyone will get to read them. I would like to ask, because the other party in the room is the objector, like to ask the parish council, or the councillor on behalf of the parish council, whether she has any objections to us looking at these draft conditions.
No, I have no objections.
Fine. So what I will now say is that that was a bit premature. A little premature. What I will now say, therefore, is that you have a raised hand.
Yes, I do.
Do you want to say something?
I do. If we are adding that material to the file, I would like to ask the council and the committee and everyone involved to also include my today's statement to the file, because I feel it's unfair if the representation was received in the written form from the Frodsham Parish Council and it exists as an attachment to the file. I feel that whatever my explanations and clarifications on their representation, it should be also in the written file and attached to the file for the further when the committee decides, so that they have it in writing.
I hear what you say. I am not aware of any such written representation that's been received.
It hasn't been received. I would like to attach it because I haven't made the statement yet or explained.
Well, let me say this. If you haven't furnished the council with this written statement you're referring to, we can't consider taking it into evidence. Obviously, you have 10 minutes. You will have 10 minutes in due course to say what you want to say. And that might be effectively reading out your statement. That's perfectly fine.
That's exactly
but
what
I don't think we can actually take anything written into account, given that it hasn't been furnished to us even prior to this meeting. So let me then finish. Sorry, Mr. Zopa, you have something you wish to say.
Yeah, I think what Elaine is alluding to, but I just to double check it, that we had some email correspondence where we tried to enter into mediation, which I don't think has been recorded, and we were kind of invited last minute to this meeting because of kind of not a miscommunication, but a flow of communication in that respect.
Well, I think the point there, we'll explore what has been said between any, and I'm not going to call them the parties, because effectively the parties to this application are the licensing authority and the applicant. But the participants in this meeting, we will explore what has been said or not said between the participants when we come to the presentation. So bear that in mind. When you have your 10 minutes, feel free, within reason, to say what you want to say. So, in order to assimilate the document, as I say, the panel has not read this. So, but my understanding is that it's a set of what having done a number of these hearings, and having sat on licensing for a few years, are going to turn out to be some suggested conditions that would be added to any premises license should it be granted. So in order to do that, I am going to suggest that we probably need 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. Sorry, let me just take some advice. As a matter of formality, can I just confirm that the licensing authority and my two fellow members, I am perfectly happy to read this stuff, are prepared to read this paperwork? Yes, 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 yes. Right. Okay, fine. That's dealt with. Thank you. She keeps me on the straight and narrow. So what we'll do is we will adjourn. I'm going to suggest it's going to take 10 minutes. So I'm going to suggest that we come back into this at 1:30. I will just switch my camera off. I will leave it live and switch the microphone off and switch the camera off. Now, Mr. Zopa, you are aware of these draft conditions, I trust you, because you and your client were party to the conversation.
On this document, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to confer with Eleanor now in that respect.
Right. What we will do then is we will email a copy of the document to you so that you can see what we have read.
Thank you.
And obviously the objective will have a copy to read. You stay here and read. We'll go outside and read. I now adjourn the meeting. Stephen, are we now live again?
Yep, the meeting is now live again.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, before we move any further, let's just, we've now read these proposed conditions. Let me just check whether anyone wishes to submit any other written material that we haven't yet seen and doesn't form part of the agenda pack into evidence. I'll look to the objector first. She shakes her head. Licensing doesn't. So it's really a question for the applicant and applicant's agent as to whether there's anything that we haven't read that you wish us to read. Obviously, we'd have to do a similar beast of adjourning in order to read anything. So can I just confirm? You both shake your head. Thank you. Let's move on. So let's get on with the formal part of the hearing, which is to start with licensing. The licensing officer is now going to present on the application, introduce herself, and over to you, Amelia.
Thank you, Chairman. West Berkshire Council Licensing received an application on the 9th of August 21 for the grant of a premises licence under Section 17 of the Licensing Act for the premises at Hawkridge House, Hawkridge Hill, Frilsham, Thatcham. The application is made for the supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 24 hours. The application relates to online sales of alcohol with occasional private invitation-only promotional events for up to 100 people to be held in the garden and the ground floor of the house. The 28-day consultation period run from the 10th of August to the 6th of September 21. The responsible authorities were advised on the 10th of August 21. The application has been advertised in accordance with the regulations, with blue notices placed at the premises and checked by an officer on the 13th of August and on the 2nd of September 21, and an advert placed in the Newbury Weekly News on Thursday, the 12th of August 21. During the statutory consultation period of 28 days, the licensing authority received one objection from Frilsham Parish Council. The Parish Council have asked if restrictions could be applied to deliveries to and from the site, and have also requested the number of events and the hours are restricted. A copy of the full representation is attached at Appendix 3 of the agenda. The nature of representations are linked to the undermining of the licensing objective, the prevention of public nuisance. I believe the objector has chosen to speak, and you can expand on your objection. Other representations, we've had none from the responsible authorities. The police and the applicant have agreed conditions to be added to the operating schedule. These have been agreed to be circulated today. They weren't included in the bundle as they came to light after the bundle was prepared. The licensing authority were also asked to facilitate a dialogue between Frilsham Parish Council and the applicant. The applicant provided further details about her application in 2 emails and as to how the premises are to be operated and managed, and gave more information about deliveries to try and alleviate the Parish Council's concerns. The information was emailed to Frilsham Parish Council on the 21st of September. The licensing authority did not receive any response from the Parish Council as at the 28th of September, so the application continued to a hearing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So first, it is for members of the panel to ask any questions. If I take chairman's privilege and start those questions. Now, I'm conscious that anyone who isn't party to the application but was watching this on YouTube will have had the opportunity, should they have wished to read the agenda pack, because that has been published on the council's website, and therefore that is available to the public to read, but they won't have had a chance to know what the document that has been put in the meantime to us to read. So I'll just explain that it is a list of proposed conditions that have been agreed between the applicant and Thames Valley Police. Refusals register, challenge 25, verification policy, training for employees in licensing objectives and so on and so forth, and documentation of that training and making sure it's refreshed. And then, and those are, I would say, fairly standard conditions that we would expect to see in pretty much any premises license. But the particular ones on deliveries, these are the delivery conditions that are being suggested. Deliveries only to be made to a full and proper residential or commercial postal address. Delivery is not to take place to car parks, bus shelters, recreation grounds, fields, etc. Well, even though that is misspelled. And on all occasions, for whatever reason, if it's not possible to deliver an order, to keep a refusals register of such failed deliveries. Now, question for licensing. I have dealt with a couple of applications where it's been off sales and deliveries of alcohol to, generally speaking, residential. This is not a wholesale operation. Generally speaking, deliveries of alcohol to residential premises. And what we've seen in those conditions have been conditions around the age verification of the individual to whom the alcohol is delivered, so that the delivery company is under an obligation therefore the license holder is under an obligation to make sure the delivery company makes effectively a challenge 25 of the individual taking delivery. So, but that's not in here.
Sorry, Chair, I need to make you aware that my Zoom is somewhat fair. Oh, you can actually see me on the screen, but I can get nothing on my screen.
Well,
I just need to reboot. I can.
Well, if we can see you and we can see you and you can see the screen, perhaps we can work.
But there's wrong type of glasses for me to do that. So,
but you do what you need.
If I can switch it off and on, then
yeah, you do that, Councillor. You're still in the room. You're still able to hear everything, so you're still party to the hearing. Ms. Mattick, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, that is something that I have seen myself, but in this occasion, it hasn't been offered as a condition or placed in the operating schedule.
But is it something you would expect, possibly as a licensing authority, to expect to see in this type of operation?
Yeah, but we would expect to see that. Sometimes it's something that the police would also ask to include, which I noticed on this occasion they haven't done.
Thank you. Members, do you have other questions for licensing? Councillor Abbs.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Just a quick one. You mentioned information mediation was sent to the Parish Council on the 21st, and they hadn't responded by the 28th. But I doubt there would have been a Parish Council meeting in such a short period of time. So
yeah, that's probably why we didn't get a response. Right. But as soon as I picked up the information and the applicant.
So we shouldn't read anything negative into that.
No, the applicant and myself had a conversation. She was happy to mediate. We started the ball rolling, but unfortunately, time restraints.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to make sure I was correct on that. So.
And one final question from me, and I don't know. We will obviously discover this from the applicant when we hear from the applicant. But let us suggest that this was an international operation, and therefore orders might be flooding in over the internet from all sorts of parts of the world. And let us suggest that an order came in from Australia during their normal daytime, but in what was the middle of the night in this country. What does the Licensing Act say about supply of alcohol? Because obviously one of the questions is the hours of operation and the hours open to the public. So really the question as to when a supply takes place in relation to the hours of operation and in relation to an international operation, what do we treat as the point of sale?
The point of appropriation is when the sale takes place. So the sale could take place at 3 o'clock in the morning on the computer, if that's what you're suggesting. So it's at the point of appropriation. So when the process takes place, the money is exchanged and the agreement's made for the alcohol to be delivered.
Thank you. That does clarify something that concerned me, and obviously we'll hear from the applicant in due course. So, Councillor Abbs.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just referring to on-off premise and whether or not you could confirm to me scenarios where potentially, I don't know, someone was, what stops people just from someone just turning up and effectively this place operating as an off license? Is there anything that stops that?
Well, there's nothing in the application to indicate it's an off license. It's a place where people can have a drink to take off the premises by invitation only.
Okay, so it's only people invited to the event that would be allowed to take things off.
I'm sure the applicant will confirm that too.
Okay, thanks very much.
So no more questions from members. We now turn to the applicant and agent, whether you have any questions for the licensing authority.
Not at this stage, not yet.
And Mr. Zopa, just to confirm, thank you. We now turn to the objector. Do you have any questions for the licensing authority?
No, not at this stage.
Thank you. So that's the licensing authority's position. So now I ask the applicant and agent, I remind you that between you, and I don't know how you want to divvy this up, you have 10 minutes. So I don't know who's going to speak to us, but over to you to decide and speak.
I will speak, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to further explain the nature of my premises license application and to address the concerns raised in the representation received from the Parish Council. My name is Mrs. Eleanor Breeze, and I'm the founder and the director of the Breeze Drinks Company, and the trading name is Swish Cocktails. And I very much regret that it had to come to the actual hearing today, and that the Frewsham Parish Council didn't engage in mediation as was offered to them, but rightly pointed it wasn't enough time probably for them to respond. The Breeze Drinks Company, Ltd, will manufacture alcoholic and non-alcoholic bottle ready-to-drink cocktails. The production, packaging and sales site is located in Leicestershire. My current premises license application is in relation to our online sales and occasional tasting sessions and promotional and charitable events. The representation received from the Parish Council has mainly two concerns: antisocial delivery hours and to restrict hours and number of days of physical trading at the premises. In regards to antisocial delivery hours, first of all, we don't anticipate a great deal of deliveries to or from the premises. As I mentioned before, our sales site is located in Leicestershire. That means that all online sales will be serviced and shipped out from the Leicestershire. Any small number of deliveries that will be done to or from Hawkridge House will be done by reputable courier companies that have set operational hours which are beyond our control. But rightly pointed earlier, when you mentioned that whatever courier company that we do engage to work with will be under the obligation to have the age verification on deliveries. The premises license application is for my house, which is my family home. And we have lived here for almost 12 years and held many large events, private events, and not once had any noise or disturbances complaints. And so as for the second objection received in the representation about the physical number of days of physical trading, in my opinion, it's unwarranted. The Frewsham Parish Council stipulation to limit the amount of events held at my property will be detrimental to my business, but also it's unnecessary. As per Parish Council's comments in their representation, it is of course extremely unlikely that I will be holding events 24 hours a day and 365 days a year. And certainly this is of course not the intention on our part, but however, I don't feel that I should be limited to the number of events or the times in which they are hosted. By placing such a limit on events at the property would cause confusion and be difficult to implement. I am entitled to hold unlimited amount of private events as a resident of my own property, and therefore I do not want to be explaining every time if any events are related to business or personal and hence allowed or not allowed. The location of my house and the substantial grounds around it would prevent noise and disturbance to the immediate neighbors, which are very few. And as a comparison, most village pubs are in residential areas and are open whole day, almost every day of a week. And yet my house is in much and they are in much closer proximity to residential dwellings, whereas Hawkridge House is in much more rural setting. And hence, I would like to ask to consider this point that it's by invitation only. It's a gated estate. So to answer your question earlier, it's not that easy to grant access onto the premises, and will be difficult for anyone just to turn up. And it won't be advertised as a public house or open any time of the day. So I conclude my explanation.
Thank you very much. I think that's very helpful. Do you have anything to add, Mrs. Opie? You've got about 3 minutes, probably.
No, just to summarise, really, you know, that the application isn't to kind of run that business full time from Hawkridge House. It's a limited amount of events and ad hoc work that it may or may not be required from there. We are very considerate in all of the operational elements of the business, that there is consideration for the residential area that surrounds, and you know, everything from operationally, realistically, is going to be done through the partner business within Leicestershire, so not on site. So this is not an application to run a full-time pick, pack and dispatch from Hawkridge House. It merely allows ad hoc things to be sent and packaged from there if required.
Thank you both. So we'll take members' questions once I've taken chairman's privilege. Now, it was said that you won't be operating 365 days and 24 hours, and I fully appreciate and understand the way in which that is presented, and indeed it's reflected in the paperwork. But of course, the premises license that might be granted and the premises license that is being sought is for 365 days and 24-hour operation. So it permits that, even though you might say we're not going to use it. And I fully appreciate that if a premises license was granted on the basis of this, and you then didn't over abuse it, if I can put it like that, and if you only held a few events, there may not be any further objection. But of course, we don't want to find ourselves in the position where we have a review hearing of a license application because the position isn't as it is presented to us. So let me just test the 24-hour piece before I think about the 365-day piece. From what you've said, and I understand about the supply of alcohol, so I'm not questioning at the moment the supply of alcohol times and dates, but the premises open to the public piece. Clearly you have private events and you might wish to have paid for events, and you'd need the license for the paid for events. My question really is, why do you need a license that goes into the early hours of the morning in order to run such events? Why do you need that access to the public during the nighttime and early morning?
No, I don't. It's purely in relation to online sales. That's exactly to your example earlier when you said if somebody buys it from Australia, that is only to cover this online sales, which are required to have 24-hour license, whereas in regards to the on-site sales, it doesn't require 24 hours, and it's not the intention to have the events that would run 24 hours, certainly.
Okay, I hear that. Obviously, we are looking at Part J of the application, which is the supply of alcohol timings, and against Part L of the application, which is the hours the premises are open to the public. I understand the Part L aspect of the application. I'm not quite so certain that you need the 24-hour open to the public part of the application, if I understand you correctly.
My understanding of the application was that when I say that I'm open to the public for the sale of alcohol, I am open even online. So that's my understanding, so that I am available to the public to sell online. So that was my understanding of the application.
Thank you, and we will clarify that with licensing in a moment. So that is the sales part. The question, I guess, about deliveries, there is at the moment in the draft delivery conditions that we've presented that you've been discussing with Thames Valley Police, there are no timings on deliveries. There's no restriction on when vehicles, for the purpose of the business, make that clear, can access and egress from your premises. And I understand the concern that might be raised by the parish, or indeed by neighbours, or indeed by the community, that they have vehicles travelling when they would not, when in a normal commercial sense they wouldn't be. So just talk to me about the hours of delivery, both to and deliveries from the premises, if any, and I understand that's going to be mostly in Leicestershire, but just in case there were some coming out of the business.
The only deliveries that we expect to and from, say first to the premises, it will be from Leicestershire with the small stock to the premises, which would be done again by the same courier company that we engaged to work with. And as I mentioned, the courier companies work in the set operational hours. They don't work in the middle of the night, or and as much as I can would like to ask them to deliver, at 1 o'clock p.m. They don't normally give exact delivery times, but yet they don't operate after, I don't know, 5, 6 p.m. So that would be beyond my control, and yet within reasons, business hours.
Thank you. I'll now turn to my fellow members. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions, if I may. The first one, I just want some clarity around, you mentioned obviously Leicestershire taking, I think, the bulk of the online sales, if I'm right. I'm not entirely clear exactly what you will be operating from the premises in terms of delivery and what that's connected to, whether it's purely connected to the events as and when you hold them, or if it's connected to any part of the online sales piece. So if you could perhaps answer that question first. Thank you.
The online piece will be from the servicing and shipping. The online orders will be from Leicestershire. What the intention for the actual premises is to have opportunity to have tasting sessions where a small group of people are invited to do the tasting, and they have an opportunity to purchase it. Or if we have a representational event, again, or charitable event where we are selling the alcohol with the proceeds either for charity or for the business. So it's only related to physical sessions.
Chairman, may I just have a supplemental to that? So, for example, if we take the example of the Australia order, that would be dealt with by Leicestershire, presumably.
The server where the purchase is done is located at Hawkridge House. So if you like, the physical exchange of the sale would take place at Hawkridge House, but the shipment and the servicing of that order would be done from Leicestershire.
Thank you. That makes it very clear. May I just have one more question, Chairman, or do you want me to give way to my colleague? My other question was, you mentioned the neighbours and the gated development and the fact it's quite sort of in a remote setting. Could you just give me a sense of how far away the nearest neighbours are in relation to your property, and how many, just to get a bit of context around that? Thank you.
We have one, sorry, no. The closest neighbour would be, again, because our garden is 17 acres, and the garden is on around the property. We do have, I would say, 4 probably neighbors that are in the proximity that could hear if we had a band playing or, you know, fireworks going off. But yet again, we are very considerate, of course, of the neighbors. And as I mentioned, we've been here for over almost 12 years and been respectful to the neighbors and that respect, and intend to do so.
Thank you.
And Councillor Abbs.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm sorry, my questions are going to be a series of relatively small ones. So if we could do a bit of pinging and ponging as we go through this. Just taking Councillor Roll's point, I was looking at Google Maps, and there's a new building. I can't quite identify what it is, but it may be residential. I see one about 40 metres away from you potentially. But first of all, before I carry on, is what's in the application pack your boundary effectively? Because
no, it's not. It's the boundary is much larger.
Right.
what is in red, it's only where I intend to have the garden, if it's in the garden or any events. That's the area where I intend to have the events.
Sure. So the house immediately south to you behind the stables is yours as well.
Yes. Yes.
And the new building further south than that's accessed across the field. Is that
no, that's a new residential dwelling.
So that would be pretty much your closest neighbour then, once it's finished.
There is one in between that new build.
But you're right. You're talking 2 or 3 or 4 within.
Yes, it's maximum 4, I would think, and they're not immediate. I think one would be considered immediate, but otherwise not.
Yeah, I just wanted to get my head around just how rural you really are, and yeah, you're pretty rural. Moving on to a couple of things that's been said. You mentioned, I think it was Swish is your trading name, is that right?
That's right. Swish cocktails.
Exquisite cocktails.
That's right. Yes.
Excellent. So your website is swishcocktails.com.
That's right. Yeah.
Fantastic. And it says on it, get notified when we reopen the online store on that website. Has it been open then?
No, it means open.
Okay, so it's just a typo on the website. That's fine. And so therefore, I take it the Leicestershire facility is something you're contracted with, not in operation.
Well, it's waiting. I cannot start trading until I get the license.
Okay, and
so we are ready. We've got the stock. We are ready to trade. We're
ready
just
and raring to go. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So the other thing was you mentioned that you service, and you said you had services on premise at your house. However, your website is a Shopify website, which generally that I doubt you've got a Shopify server on.
But not the. What I mean, service that I will be in control of the website, and will be done from my computer.
So you've got a PC that you can access Shopify with, and okay, so it's actually not on site at all, because that's data residency would put that wherever the servers are for Shopify, which can be all over the world, I think. So I'm trying to get this around. The reason I'm asking all these questions, I'm trying to get my head around the whole 24/7 need for a license on a premise when, in fact, Leicestershire is doing all the delivery, and you're not selling off-site. You're managing a website on site, but you're not actually doing the sale. That's done through a third party. I'll have to ponder that later and discuss it with fellow members. But that's why I was asking those questions, to try and get my head around exactly what you need and what you need it for.
But I would argue here that I think it's incorrect, because the registered company's address is registered to this premises.
Yes, I saw that.
The Breeze Drinks company is registered to Hawkridge House. And if we are to trade online, as you said, the server could be around the world, but it's the premises, it's the premises that the company is legally registered would be liable to have the license to trade online, in my understanding.
I may well come back to the licensors offer. It may be a question back for licensing officers to confirm the exact scenario, but I'm a layman in terms of this process, so sorry for so many questions.
Well, so am I, so you know.
So the other part of it was the events side, and I totally get that you would want to have some stock to be able for tastings and this and that and the other. I still am somewhat curious about the real reason behind, or what you really need in terms of events, because I think you started to intimate that you've got this mixture between using your house as a private house with private events, and then obviously events that you would want to run as a business event. They are distinct in your mind, and the reason you've asked for 24/7, 365 is so that there's no confusion between one and the other. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. As I pointed out, the 24/7 it's purely for online sales. But again, as I repeat to myself, that the events or the tastings that we want to run here on the premises, we need to have the license to be able to sell if we have these events.
No, but the application itself is for events, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. That's the application in front of us, I believe, Chairman, yes? They would allow events up to that level.
Well, that was the line of my questioning.
Yeah,
and indeed, we will look to licensing officers to advise us on that.
Okay, well, we come back. But so, yeah, I think that's probably enough micro questions. So thank you very much for helping me out with that.
Before I turn to the licensing officer and the objector, let me just clarify a couple of things following on from what's just been asked and answered. You're looking for the ability to run events, which I understand you already run private events. You would want to run what I would call commercial events, whether they were for charity or for the business or whatever. They would still be commercial in the sense that money would be changing hands and alcohol sales would be taking place. In your paperwork, you refer to those events being no more than 100 people, and to them being infrequent, if I can put it like that. Clearly, one of the concerns of the licensing body, we as members granting a premises license, is that just because that's the intention that's advanced, it doesn't necessarily mean it's what you're given, it's what you're granted, and you could go beyond it, because obviously a basic premises license gives you the ability to have up to 5,000 people. And as has just been pointed out, run 365 days a year. So I just want to explore the extent to which we might have a meeting of minds as to limits on the number of people who might attend a commercial event. And this would not seek to impose any restriction, obviously, on your private events. On a commercial event for which the premises license was necessary. Looking for some thoughts on the number, maximum number who might attend one of those events, and the number of days a year that you might run such an event. Can I have your thoughts on that?
Well, as you said, I put on the application up to 100 people, but as you pointed out, legally I'm allowed up to 5,000. But I don't intend to have 5,000. I simply won't be able to feed them, probably. And again, my understanding was if I was going to have a large event, I would just simply apply for event license, one-off. But so what is the question? I didn't understand.
Well, I make this comment: if you didn't have a premises license,
right?
The maximum number that you could get under a temporary events notice,
yeah,
including everyone, that's people coming, staff, you, everybody on the ground, is 500. Premises license gives you 5,000. Now, I can perceive that if you didn't have a premises license and you wanted to run charitable events a couple of times a year, you might well choose to go down the 10 route rather than the full premises license route. But what I'm exploring is how many times a year you realistically think you will want to run events, and how many people you realistically think you would like to be attending those events.
Okay, I understand. In terms of how many times, realistically, I can't tell. We are a startup company, and that's why I thought putting a number as a Frilsham Parish Council were trying to do, and say 12. My question was, how does that number came around? Why not 5 or 25 or 100? I mean, I can't tell at the moment how it will turn out. All I can say is that it's my home. I live here, so I can't. I'm not turning it into a full commercial premises to run events constantly. So it would, of course, be on a realistic basis, but at the moment I'm unable to give you an exact number of events. As for the number of people, that's why I put 100 people in my application, because I don't intend to have large events in my property.
And thank you for that. I think Councillor Rolls, do you want to come back?
Sorry, no, that was actually my question around the number of people. So sorry, I meant to take my hand down, but I'm challenged slightly with doing my Zoom hand today.
Thank you. So I think that concludes the questions from members of the panel. So I now turn to licensing, whether licensing has any questions for the applicant.
No, I don't, thank you.
And whether the objector has any questions for the applicant.
No, I don't at the moment, thank you.
So I thank you for your presentations, and obviously you'll get a chance to, we'll now turn to the objector, hear what the Parish Council has to say, and you then get an opportunity to ask questions in due course when we get through that. So if you could both kindly mute, and we'll now turn to the Parish Council.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, I'd just like to say that on the face of it, on the application, Frilsham Parish Council wasn't overly concerned and thought that the licence for purely an online business seemed to be appropriate given the size of the premises as well. That being said, it really is the timings and frequency of events that is the cause of concern for the Parish Council, following varying comments from residents in the village and parishioners. Looking at 4.1 on the public document pack, obviously Mrs. Breeze has suggested an occasional private promotional events for up to 100 people. Chairman has rightly pointed out that with a premises licence, that could be many, many more. We also noticed on the operating schedule, part 3, A to H, it was noted that be no recorded music or any other form of music at promotional events. We just want to query whether this is actually correct. Mrs. Breeze has commented in her presentation on an example of having a band playing, for instance, and therefore with the size of premises, it not necessarily being a nuisance to any neighbours. Again, going back to the amount of people that could be at the premises for any promotional events, we have concerns about the amount of vehicles that would entail passing through and leaving, potentially in the very early hours of the village, single track roads with residential properties on both sides of single track roads. Whilst it is a very rural community, there are quite a lot of residential premises in Filsham, albeit a small village, but the residents are concerned about the amount of vehicles if promotional events are unlimited and with unlimited timings. One such concern is promotional events like this, as the garden has been included in the application, may well be taking place during the summer. That could again potentially be even 50 to 80 cars with an event of 100 people. Without any timings on the operation of events, they could be leaving through the village at 3 o'clock in the morning on a summer's night. We all know that summer nights at the moment can be quite hot, so a lot of people will have their windows open for temperature control. So it's really just about not affecting the enjoyment of everybody in the village. We don't want to put unnecessary limitations on Mrs. Breeze's business, but we do have a duty of care to protect everybody. It should be noted that most of the lanes out of the village would take the invitees back to the main vehicle routes to get out of the area. So there isn't really many areas in that village where vehicles wouldn't be going past the residential properties. Obviously, Filsham Parish Council can only make comments based on the application for the business, and it was the 365 day of the year, 24-hour day element that concerned us. If the committee is minded to grant the licence without any restrictions on frequency of events, we would like to ask if a terminal hour of said events could be put as a condition. Other local venues such as the Pot Kiln, the Royal Oak and Tap Room, we believe all have terminal hours on their premises licence. And this is a question, is it common for a residential domestic property to be granted a premises licence for 365 days a year, 24 hours a day? If so, do any of those have terminal hour restrictions within the premises licence? And that's really the only concern that the local residents have. Thank you.
I'll start questions from the panel and see if my fellow members have any to ask as well. A couple of thoughts for you just to seek your response. Mrs. Breeze is already, and I can clarify this with her in due course, or is intending to be, and for the purpose of the application needs to be, designated premises supervisor of the premises license and to hold a personal license. Someone who holds a personal license can apply for many more temporary event notices than a mere member of the public, and therefore could, if this premises license was granted, but with restrictions upon it, apply for such TENs and hold events up to 500 people where this scrutiny process wouldn't for the most part happen, because obviously it would be a matter for responsible authorities to decide whether they had an objection, not necessary for parish council, for example. So just to consider that aspect of the matter. And the other comment, and I look for your response, is obviously these are all public roads, and therefore anyone could be driving down them at any hour of the day or night. Why should we view this particular imposition on the public road network, if I can put it like that, differently to that generality? So those two thoughts for you to ponder upon and respond.
Yes, I think in terms of the roads, it's potentially a lot of concentrated traffic coming through at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning, which could happen 3 or 4 nights a week under the current licence application. We're not saying that Mrs. Breeze would hold events that often, but that is what's been applied for, and that's the concern. In terms of the temporary events notice, yes, you're absolutely correct, and you could argue it's the be careful what you wish for scenario. I would hope that in looking at temporary events notices, the people concerned would take all of that sort of thing into consideration. We have the Pot Kiln, we have the Royal Oak, we have the West Berkshire Brewery tap room, all within very close proximity. The village is not unaware of events, and events are held, and usually people are well warned about them. But this application doesn't hasn't had any music applied for, so therefore with the size of the property we can't imagine that that's going to become a nuisance to the local residents.
Thank you. And Councillor Rolls first.
Yes, thank you. I've got a couple of questions actually. You mentioned a number of other establishments in the area, and forgive me, I'm not over familiar with the area. And I'm just wondering, who no doubt can apply for their own licenses as well. What this appears to me to be in a very remote sort of rural location, which seems to be advantageous in a way compared to, say, a pub, some of the ones that you've mentioned, West Berkshire Brewery as well. So my question is, how you see the impact of this any different to the other establishments? And I appreciate you talked about the timing of late night, etc. But there may be scope for those other premises to apply for similar type licenses in early hours or whatever. So I'm just wondering why we should view this differently, and your views on that. And I've got a couple of other questions as well. Thank you.
I think the point is we are asking you to view it the same as the other establishments that don't have licenses for 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day. We are trying to ensure that we look at the potential risks before they happen, so that there isn't the inconvenience for the applicant, the parishioners, or anybody to be 6 months down the line and asking for a review of the licence. Yeah.
May I ask a couple more questions, Chairman? Thank you. You mentioned car parking and that there would be, I think you mentioned sort of 50 to 80 cars envisaged sort of parking at any one time. I'm not quite clear how that would impact based on the size of this location and the facility that seems to me on paper to be able to accommodate that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to imply car parking. I was, the parish council were concerned that if 100 cars or 50, 80 cars are leaving at 3 o'clock in the morning, the nuisance to the local residents as they all go through the village to get to the A34 or the M4 or Reading or
so more
wherever.
The impact on the roads, the immediate sort of roads.
Absolutely.
Just got one final question as well. So just in terms of the deliveries, which is mentioned in your objection, based on Mrs. Breeze's comments around Leicestershire taking most of the delivery piece, am I assuming that would that no longer be a problem to the parish council in that there doesn't seem to be much delivery going on?
Absolutely. The parish council feels that the delivery of product question has been answered to their satisfaction.
So that element of the objection in writing, we can sort of park and focus on the...
It's purely the end timings
of events. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Councillor Rose.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Quite simple, really. A comment was made about parish council not participating in mediation. Was it simply timing, or could you explain why? Or
I think it was simply timing.
Just
I think it was purely timing. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you.
Now, before I turn to the applicant's agent to sum up, I just want to bottom out one issue to the extent we're going to be able to do that with licensing, which is this question of hours open to the public. And the question as to whether or not Mrs. Breeze has advanced the notion, if I understand her correctly, and she can soon tell me if I'm wrong, that the need for hours open to the public being 24 hours is that whole Australia order in the middle of the night piece. Now, my perception, as to some extent lay, but I have done a number of these hearings of hours open to the public, is it's precisely that. It is the hours that the physical premises are open to members of the public visiting the physical premises, as opposed to online sales. But I look for licensing's view.
I agree with you. It is it's open to the public to visit the premises, but the public are still using or still applying for alcohol during those hours, but they're not physically going into the home. So I would agree with what you're saying.
So if, for example, there was a restriction on hours open to the public to what the licensing subcommittee thought were reasonable in terms of physical attendance for an event, that would not stop overnight sale of alcohol through a computer system, because it would comply with the supply of alcohol part under J. Have I got that correct?
You are correct.
Thank you. And with that in mind, I'll now look to the applicant. Hearing that, sorry, I'm looking, Councillor Rolls is looking like she wants to ask something. Councillor Rolls.
Chair, sorry, you just asked, forgive me for perhaps not knowing the procedure on this particular piece, but I wanted to ask a question around the music piece. Can I direct that?
Please do, because we want to make sure that we get everything sorted, everything clear. So please do.
Thank you very much. I know that the application does not include license for music, except is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
What is preventing the applicant? Does that therefore prevent the applicant from being limited in that respect? So in short, they could have a big band, they could have lots of fireworks at these events that are being proposed.
The applicant hasn't applied for the provision of regulated entertainment, so which means that she will be providing entertainment to the people that come to her event. She hasn't applied for that, so she's not permitted to hold regulated entertainment.
So that she's not permitted to do that until she applies.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And if I can just bottom that one out even a little further, my recollection is that licensed premises which don't have recorded music, live music, etc., as part of their permissions may nevertheless, certainly unamplified music is permitted. Just bottom out what is permitted or not permitted on licensed premises without specifics in the premises license.
Deregulation of the Licensing Act permits background music and regulated entertainment at some premises, but off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you which these are or aren't, but there is deregulation and entertainment can take place.
That was indeed my recollection as well. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chairman. It's pretty much. I feel like I need a fuller answer on that. I'm afraid. We got two tick boxes here: live music, recorded music. Recorded music, by its very nature, will become amplified music because it needs to be played through a speaker system, so it has to be amplified music. So I thought there were rules and conditions around that. It would be interesting to hear back from the applicant in a moment as to how these events are going to run without any amplified or unamplified music for that.
Well, again, speaking as a sort of semi-lay person on these things, but nevertheless having had something to do with some of them, and indeed being involved in 2 premises licenses myself, my comment is that the form that is used for applying for a premises license hasn't caught up with the changes in licensing law and the deregulation of certain aspects of licensing. And therefore, whilst it said you need to apply for live music, that tends to be for more than 500 people on the premises, and certain types of amplified, certainly unamplified music is generally permitted.
Yeah, on any, it tends to be on any premises. The amplified is connected mainly to places that sell alcohol, like a pub, but unamplified could be any premises.
Yeah,
Up to 500.
but that goes with the territory, and I don't, I think that is simply part and parcel of the deregulation regime around licensing law, and we are bound by that. So there's nothing more to be said on that. So having explored those particular aspects of licensing law, I now turn to the applicant and or the agent to sum up their position.
Thank you. And I just wanted to comment, if you are struggling with the regulations, you can imagine what the newcomer like myself filling out the application form felt. As you pointed out, I do hold the personal license. And when I was studying for the personal license, that's what I remember as well, that they said that certain events up to the certain amount of people is permitted entertainment. And the intention of the amplification of the music on the application was that if we were to have a huge band performing, then that would fall under the event application rather than under the premises license. So the intention was just to, as you said, to have a background music what would be amplified through the speakers, but not as the concert, on the stage speakers. That was my understanding when I was filling out the form, the application. And but to summarize for your consideration as a committee, I would ask you to consider the points that we have discussed, so that we are not intending to have deliveries in and out of the property all the time. We are not intending to trade on premises 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We are intending to supply alcohol online 24 hours a day, 365 times a year. And we would like not to be limited on the number of tasting sessions or events that we are allowed to hold. As the parish council pointed out, there are quite a few establishments in the area, and I don't see why we should be discriminated against them. And therefore, I would like you to consider all the aspects of as a business aspect, but yet it's my home. So again, I'm living here, so I won't be having 5 o'clock in the morning parties when I have children and family here.
Thank you. And I take it Mr. Zopa has nothing to add. Good. And I just want to make absolutely certain before I conclude that both of you have heard everything that we've been discussing. You've heard us in the chamber, so you are fully aware of the questions, the discussions, the comments that have been made. You haven't been unable to hear us at any point.
Heard.
And Mr. Zopa?
Yes.
Thank you both. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the hearing. As I said at the start, what will now happen after we formally finish the meeting, the subcommittee will consider everything that's been said and indeed everything that's been written and indeed the Act and the guidance and our own licensing policy and come to a conclusion about whether or not to grant a premises license, and if we do decide to grant it, what conditions we might attach to that premises license, and we will issue that decision in writing and at the furthest out within 5 working days. So thank you, everyone. I'd ask you to stay online for the moment, stay in the room while we close the meeting formally on YouTube, and then I'll release you all.